Hello everyone, welcome to my presentation. My name is Zoe Flowers-Reitsma, and today's presentation is called Healthy Nudges, a Non-Manipulative Approach to Influencing Behavior. The following presentation aims to provide a sound argument that supports government's adoption of the nudge theory. The objective of the presentation is to provide an analysis on how the public sector's adoption of the nudge theory can influence behavior in a positive manner that supersedes concerns of mental manipulation. The final part of the presentation will provide an opportunity to pilot a case study that uses the nudge theory to address fare evasion on Calgary's public transit system. A challenge in this form of policy design is the ethical debate surrounding the nudge theory, particularly concerns that nudging may constitute a subtle form of mental manipulation and that mechanisms lack sufficient transparency. Although these critiques raise important questions, existing research indicates that nudges can effectively influence behavior in ways that promote beneficial individual and societal outcomes. This tension gives rise to a significant policy dilemma. The core of the problem that we have reviewed in several literary reviews is that governments require the flexibility to experiment with and implement innovative behavioral interventions, such as nudges, to address complex social and economic issues. However, as we know, ongoing skepticism about the ethical legitimacy of nudging risks constraining policymakers' capacity to deploy these tools, even when evidence suggests that they can support the common good. Consequently, it is necessary to critically assess how ethical concerns can be balanced with the demonstrated potential of nudging to contribute meaningfully to public policy objectives. As such, the goal of this presentation is to demonstrate that the nudge theory is a creative and effective form of persuasion, as the intention is clear and well communicated. In an era where innovation and low-cost execution are paramount for public programs, the nudge theory offers practical solutions to promote positive behavioral change across populations. When designed and implemented with transparency, nudges can function as ethically defensible policy tools that help individuals avoid choices they may later regret, particularly those driven by impulse rather than deliberation. In this sense, transparency serves as an essential safeguard, ensuring that citizens remain aware of underlying intent and can maintain their autonomy while still benefiting from some subtle behavioral guidance. Although critics often characterize nudging as a form of manipulation, it can also be understood as a constructive and humane approach to policymaking. By aligning behavioral insights with policy goals, nudges offer a means of encouraging socially desirable actions without coercion or financial pressure. This framing positions nudges not as an infringement on personal freedom, but as an innovative method for strengthening the connection between public policy and the lived experiences of citizens. 5 literary articles were reviewed, each providing a level of skepticism and/or adoption in the nudge theory. It was important to consider the arguments from each of the authors to form my own opinion and conclusion. According to Thaker and Sustine, a nudge is a small change in how choices are presented to people that gently guides them toward a certain behavior without taking away any options and without offering big rewards or punishments. Charter and Nikkei illustrate how minor adjustments in government communication can produce meaningful outcomes. For example, subtle changes in messaging have been shown to improve success rates in ethnic minority applicants in police recruitment processes increasing adherence to essential medication regimes, and encouraging tax payments. These examples, highlighted by Charter and Nikki, demonstrate the potential for small, carefully designed behavioral interventions to generate public benefits. However, on the skepticism side, Dung, in his 2025 article, The Effectiveness of Nudging and Its Ethical Implications, questions how well nudges actually work. It also argues that if nudges aren't very effective, they aren't worth the money. And if they aren't cost effective, then it may not be morally okay for governments to spend taxpayers' money on them, especially when there are better, more effective options available. The following articles were reviewed, and of particular interest, I would like to draw your attention to one of the reviews from the Proxy Change Management landing page. In this page, Proxy attempts to break down the nudge theory into simplistic themes. First one being reducing friction by presenting the easiest path for desired behavior. Visibility, positioning reminders or cues where people see them naturally. Example is putting a tool front and center. Alignment, match the nudge with organizational priorities so it supports larger goals rather than existing in isolation. I think this one's very important for policymakers, ensuring that the mechanisms that are being established align with the outcomes of the organization. Also, ensuring that there's an ability to opt out, ensuring individuals can decline participation easily, preserving their autonomy, making it clear that taking a new job is entirely voluntary. This is where transparency is essential. Trust is the foundation of effective nudging. Without it, a nudge feels more like an empowering choice and more like an unseen force, undermining autonomy instead of respecting it. I found those points very interesting on the Proxy website. Key findings. At the heart of nudge theory is the idea that governments and institutions can design policies that support the common good by making the desirable choice the easier, more obvious, or more appealing one. This approach is meant to improve how policies are implemented by relying on subtle psychological insights rather than strict regulations. As P.G. Henson 2018 explains, nudging offers policymakers a way to influence people's behavior without restricting their freedom, without imposing obligations, and without introducing new taxes or financial incentives. In other words, nudges aim to help people make better choices while still preserving full autonomy and keeping all options open. An important ethical concern raised in recent discussions is whether nudges are actually effective enough to justify their use. Dung argues that the lack of effectiveness provides an additional reason to question the ethical permissibility of nudging. Put simply, if nudges do not work as well as originally believed, then we must reconsider whether it's morally acceptable for governments to spend public resources on them. This raises the question, if nudging is less effective than we assumed, should we become more skeptical, less skeptical, or remain equally skeptical about its ethical use? An argument offered in that nudge theory was originally designed with good intentions. It aimed to help governments encourage citizens to adopt behaviors that benefit both individuals and society, such as improving health, saving money, increasing safety, and supporting the economy. While some studies show promising outcomes, critics argue that the evidence is inconsistent and not strong enough to support widespread adoption. If nudges are not reliably effective, then policymakers may be promoting interventions that do not deliver meaningful results, which could be seen as a misuse of taxpayer money or a distraction from more effective alternatives. Therefore, the debate centers on whether nudging remains ethically defensible when its real-world impact appears uncertain. An example in current day that I would like to present is the escalation in concern over increased loss in Calgary's public transit revenue due to fare evasion. It is important to provide some context and historical background to fully understand the problem that requires addressing. In 2023, the Transit Public Safety Team developed a comprehensive strategy to address the impact of social disorder on and around the transit system. However, heightened focus on safety shifted priorities away from fare evasion, resulting in a substantial increase in non-payment incidents. To address this drastic decline in compliance and revenue, Transit Public Safety conducted a review of the administrative penalty notice, which was the fare evasion ticketing model in place since 2020. Unfortunately, this system was deemed ineffective in addressing fare evasion in the ticketing process. It did not mitigate the issue at hand, and unfortunately has resulted in a culture of non-compliance, as there is no consequence that has been embedded within Calgary Transit riders. Based on the nudge theory literature, in tandem with improving fare collection methods, the City of Calgary could consider adopting a marketing campaign that creatively addresses fare evasion along with consequential policies. My recommendation is the launch of a campaign that looks at some of the fun ways to nudge riders to pay their fare, such as, most riders pay their fare. Thank you for being one of them. And maybe one that offers more of a sense of community. Your fare keeps buses running. Thanks for supporting your community. In conclusion, while there are concerns regarding the effectiveness of nudge theory and whether this form of healthy manipulation should be permissible, I believe that governments have found an innovative behavior-based approach at the intersection of social and economic benefits. If successful, this cost-effective approach can change where enforcement and penalties have unintended consequences that cost more to taxpayers. According to Lawler and Hopkins, when it succeeds, nudge theory can help citizens avoid feeling regret from making uninformed, myopic decisions based on intuition and emotion rather than deliberation and reasoned analysis. When it fails, it provides quality evidence for policymakers to find alternatives and quickly. Thank you for listening to my presentation.